Hi there, I'm Alexis Kingsbury. I'm going to be running this session on how to run a successful business, which is quite a tall order, I think, as a topic, but hopefully I'll do a fairly good job of unpicking what that even is as a topic, and then hopefully giving you some useful approaches, strategies, processes to help you to do this. I'm going to start by telling you a bit of a story, which is that 4 years ago, almost exactly 4 years ago, I was running a two-man management consultancy and had been doing since May 2010 with my co-founder Paddy, and we were providing consultancy to companies like AstraZeneca and Sony on how to improve the performance of their teams. That was something I'd done previously for a consultancy, so I had worked in a consultancy based in London, but we decided that we were going to set up our own because we wanted to create a software business. So you might think it's a bit crazy. Hang on, you wanted to create a software business, so you created a management consultancy. The thinking was that we didn't have an idea for a software business, nor any money for one. So what we'd do is create a management consultancy and then use the money from that and the interaction with clients to create both the idea and the funding for us to create this software business. So we did that, and in the background we started to come up with this idea of a piece of software called SpiderGap, which was an online gap analysis tool. Which basically is sort of an online survey to help you identify where are you now, where do you want to be, and what's the gap. We developed it, and that's the team that we had at the time. That's Paddy there. We developed it and we did a big launch party. We first went around the streets of t-shirts, and then we did this big launch party that was all Halloween themed, and people did us some pumpkins with the logo on the backs of spiders, and it was all amazing. That was in the end of October 2011. So 1 year later, what happened after a big launch party? Well, I think you know what's coming, which is that basically the sales did this with one customer spending £1,000 at that point, and then basically down here. Now the problem is that means an average of like £47 a month and an average of £347 a month, which is a big growth. It's like 6 times that. But unfortunately, £347 isn't a lot, particularly if you're working 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. 6 days a week. It's not a great pay, particularly if you're paying for accountants and servers and domains and hundreds of other things that you need to pay for as a business. And also if you have to split your profit with a co-founder, which a lot of people don't talk about when they fill in surveys telling me that they need to find a co-founder, because that's basically, right, cool, got a co-founder, now double all of your forecasts and everything so that you can pay for that. Is that your most expensive employee? And also not just the money from the software business, but we had this consultancy that was doing really well, but guess what? That money was funding the software business, and then any profit left over, if there was any, there wasn't.
So there wasn't any income?
Was the management consultancy and the software business. Management consultancy provided more than that, but of course a large portion of that was funding the software business, and then whatever else was left was split between the two of us. And also I'd got big life plans. You know, I was an ambitious sort of person, not just in business, but you know, I'd found the love of my life. She's there. That's her at the SpiderGap launch party. And next to her is Hannah, who was Paddy's love of his life. And back then she was very happy to put Spider on her head and be very nice. But what she's not showing there is the fact that she was pretty pissed off with me. Because we, in the run up to the launch and launching the website, we had to work crazy hard, like through the night. You know, there were times where I'm sat in bed with a laptop. She did not like that. She was planning on getting rid of me. Fortunately, I had an idea. Took her to Paris, got engaged. So that's solved that problem for the long term. But engagement rings are expensive, and £347 minus doesn't do that either, particularly if you're planning on doing a big wedding. That's also not very helpful. It's a lovely wedding. Very expensive dress. No, so they're expensive too. And children are even more expensive. And so when that scan came in April 2013, we knew we needed a slightly different plan. And we have had another scan recently, and now we're going to have another one in Boxing Day. So, bit of a question for you. Bear in mind what you know about where I was. What would you consider successful? What would you consider a successful business 3 years later? What do you think?
To not change what you're doing and go back to a paid job.
Sorry, you're saying not to end up going back to a paid job. Okay, cool. So that could be a requirement for success. Be in a situation where you don't have to do that. Very good. Anything else?
Be in a situation where you can comfortably manage your work-life balance.
Brilliant.
2 children now.
Absolutely. Be in a situation where you can manage work-life balance, and that's not just about not working ridiculous hours, but kids go sick all the time.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, the number of, my wife works in a corporate job. We're a, modern sort of relationship where actually I have to take some days off to look after him. And, you can't do that if you're having to do 5 a.m. to 6, that kind of sets you back a week. Anything else?
You also want your business to, you're hoping after 3 years to bring some kind of revenue in to show that you're actually going in the right direction. People are coming to use whatever you've created.
Interesting. So there's 2 parts in there. One was about the revenue and the financial part, which I think definitely has to be part of it. And the second part is the validation. The fact that you're hearing the right things that tell you that you should even continue down this path. So it's not any of those, and we didn't achieve or do any of those. I'm not sure we even aimed at achieving or doing any of those. But these are often some of the things that in the press we talk about as being like the successful things. And I think sometimes we don't think about the work-life balance and actually just getting validation that you're going in the right direction, and actually just not being in a situation where you have to go back with your tail between your legs and say, yeah, I'm basically a failed business guy. Can I come back in, please? Instead, what did we do? Well, we learned a lot. We pivoted, come across the concept of pivoting? Yeah? No? So there's a book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, and in that he talks about the concept of getting early feedback, and as a result you then identify where you need to pivot the business. And pivoting is basically where you change one aspect in a big way, like who your target customer is, or what your product does for them, or the pain point that it does, or the business model, and you do a big change. We did it 3 times to get to where we are. So 3 years and 3 pivots later, our sales diagram didn't look like it was down at the bottom, and it's difficult to see, but the scale of this has changed. So our best month, which was last month, was £35,000 in that month. On average, over the last 7 months, so this financial year, we're averaging £15,500 per month. Our costs aren't very high. As a result, that does everything we need to do financially and so on. And the growth is really good as well, because actually if you plot it on an annual basis, it looks like that. Hooray, hockey stick. We all want a hockey stick. In reality, it feels like that. It definitely feels, you feel all of these low points and you feel all of these high points. It never feels like hockey stick. It's ridiculous. And there were lots of changes. We changed the target market. We changed our target market again. We increased our prices. We created marketing automation. We increased our prices again and tripled our marketing spend. This doesn't happen by accident. It requires constant pivots and changes. And the plan that we had, in fact, what's a year? A year is that. The plan that we had back here, Halloween 2011, in fact, that wasn't even when we first started. That was the launch party. We'd got the product then, our MVP. Definitely wasn't what we thought we'd be over here.
Do you think you would still have had those spikes if you hadn't, even if they weren't as high, you would still have had those spikes if you hadn't spent as much money? Do you think that because you said first tripled marketing spend?
After that. We've tripled our marketing spend here.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Based on looking, and I will talk more about this later, based on measuring this and going, spending that money gives us an ROI, let's spend more. So we can talk about that more later. But yeah, so as a result, financially, I think that's kind of the diagram they draw for success. But as we've talked about, that isn't the most important thing. And actually, validation, people telling us that we love this product. SpiderGap is now the top rated 360 feedback tool. Awesome. There's like 120 competitors. We're the top one. I'm in the process of writing like a landing page about why we're the top one and creating a whole marketing funnel through it. That is awesome that we could even get there. And if I'd spoken to nearly anyone 2 years ago and asked them, do you think we could aim to be the best? They'd have gone, no, that's crazy. But we set that as the aim and achieved it, which is cool. Probably even more important than that is these two. I still have this wife, and as a result we have this son who I see all the time. I can't overstate that because I know lots of entrepreneurs that separate from their wives as through the process of entrepreneurship and don't get to see their children. And for me, if you achieve the financial and you lose this, you haven't succeeded. Okay? And there's a great book, How Will You Measure Your Life, by Clayton M. Christensen, which talks about a lot of his Harvard school buddies, how each reunion he was finding fewer and fewer of them were happy. You know, they all started off successful and ended up in prison, without wives, without children, you know, committing suicide, whatever. And it's because their focus was wrong, but we can talk more about that later. Also, I'll share my average read perfect day, because that's what I have nearly every day. I wake up naturally, not this morning, my son had a nightmare morning. Normally, I wake up naturally.
You wake up naturally at 5:30.
I'm a weirdo.
Right?
Right?
So much, life is easier for those who can do that naturally.
I won't go into it. There are ways in which you can like help your body to like lead less sleep and whatever. And Tim Ferriss writes, and records way more on this than I can possibly do. And there's a great book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Highly recommend you all read it. I've got a friend who sent me a message the other day saying, "So glad to have met you. Your advice to follow Miracle Morning has changed my life." And it's
kids, because kids also help you wake up early.
Hal doesn't. She and I do, and definitely they help you wake up early. So waking up naturally is kind of a bit of a joke, but I do exercise every morning as part of the Miracle Morning. I spend time with my son downstairs before my wife wakes up. She wakes up and gets ready for work. I have breakfast with him every single morning, make him eggs, have a cup of tea with my wife when she comes down for a bit. She then takes him to nursery on the way to work. I then basically get ready, start work. I do whatever I think is going to move me towards my goals, my priorities, what I deem like is going to make me happier, more successful, whatever. I get to have coaching calls with awesome people that I respect, either me coaching them or them coaching me, and get to spend that good quality time. I probably have ignored my emails up to about 11:30, but then I might answer a few. I'll listen to an audiobook while I'm preparing and eating lunch. I love listening to audiobooks. I listen to about 100 a year, so it's 100 books a year. And I love that, and also I'll try and walk and maybe go and work from the cafe, or more often the wine bar in my town. And I'll do whatever, again, progresses me towards my goals or makes me happy, that I'm excited about. At 6, when my wife comes home, I stop working and go and join her and be with my son. We then spend quality time, put our son to bed, and I spend quality time with my wife watching a film, relaxing. For me, that is my perfect day, and actually, by writing it down about, a few, like a year ago or whatever, I've managed to create it that way round. This isn't me writing down what now happens. I wrote it down, then created it, and now it is my average day. Important point. Okay? So now who am I? Well, I've got 3 businesses. Spider Gut, which I've talked about. The management consultancy I still do. I'm meeting with Sony this afternoon. And I created a new one in April called Making Greatness, which is all about developing A-player teams, hiring, developing, retaining A-players within teams and organisations. That's me on Twitter, if you are a tweeter. And as someone pointed out this morning, I'm now 30. I turned 30 this year. I know, you're like, what? You look way older than that. It's like, yeah, that was the 5 a.m., 7 p.m. thing that did to my face. And I highlight that because one thing that's really funny is that when I turned 30, people said, so how does it feel? Does it feel different? And every birthday up to that point, my answer was, no, it feels the same. And the reason that 30 was different was because I think when I was like 13, I told myself that I needed to achieve these things by the time I was 30 and had this idea of what that might be. And I think I actually have ticked off a lot of the things I set back then, and actually the things that I haven't, I look back at as being a bit thick, a bit stupid, and not things that I would have wanted to achieve, and indeed didn't focus on I didn't have it clear enough as a goal to even work towards it. Like, for example, I think when I was 13, I thought I'd create an empire that was bigger than Branson's. I don't even know why I'd want that. Never mind achieving it. So as a result, that isn't something I've done, but I've definitely done the others in terms of some of my financial goals, in terms of the important bit about my family and so on. So I'm sort of really happy with where I've got to, and I'm really happy with the day I've got, but crucially it's not the selling to Google, it's not the IPO thing, okay? So why am I telling you this? Well, I'm telling you because success is a journey, not a destination. It isn't something that you tick off and you've done it forever. I don't look at this now and go, brilliant, it's perfect. I can basically go and play PlayStation now. I mean, that's part of my plan, but it's later in the plan. So instead, it's a journey, and if you don't decide what you want from that journey, then you don't get it. If you don't design what your perfect day is, it never ends up like that. If you don't set out some goals, they don't happen. And when I've looked back over the last 5 years at the things that I properly set and wrote down as goals, I've achieved all of them. Weird. I set as big as I could think of goals, and I've achieved them. And what I realised is I didn't set them big enough, and now that's what I'm doing. And but it's a process of learning and finding yourself and so on. And that's what success is. That's what happiness is. It's doing stuff you enjoy and excite you and make you happy.